75% of the once lost territory has been reclaimed, yet the cost of this recovery is written in blood across every parched meter of the blazing borderlands. For over a decade, millions of our brothers and sisters were forced to flee their ancestral homes, leaving behind charred ruins and the hollow silence of a land stolen by the shadows of terror. It was a time of profound darkness, where the sovereignty of the soil seemed like a forgotten dream. But from these very ashes, Ibrahim Traoré has summoned a formidable force, not just of professional soldiers, but of builders, tailors and farmers who have traded their tools for rifles to defend the nation's pride. When a people collectively decide that a death in freedom is far more precious than a life in chains, is there any power on this earth capable of halting their advance? Stay with us. This is not merely a war report. It is the soul of a nation rising from the abyss. Subscribe and stand with us as we witness the reclamation of dignity. The call of the motherland is not a whisper. It is a roar that echoes from the granite hills to the sun-scorched plains of the Sahel. For too long, the map of our nation was a patchwork of wounds, with a significant portion of our territory held in the suffocating grip of those who sought to extinguish our light. The soil of the borderlands is a sacred witness, a deep and enduring archive of every struggle and every victory we have ever known. It is not merely dirt and rock. It is the very flesh of our ancestors, the silent foundation upon which our dignity is built. For over a decade, this soil was desecrated. We watched in silent agony as the borders were blurred by violence, and the map was carved into red zones where the authority of the state was but a ghost. Millions of our people were uprooted, cast adrift like leaves in a storm, forced to abandon the fields that had fed their families for generations. The regret was a heavy shroud, covering the land in a darkness that many feared would never lift. But a seed of defiance was quietly germinating beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to break through the hard crust of despair. That moment arrived with a clarity that the world could no longer ignore. Under the resolute guidance of Ibrahim Traoré, the call went out, not just to the professional ranks of the military, but to the very soul of the citizenry. The expansion of the Volunteers for the Defense of the Fatherland, the VDP, marked a fundamental pivot in the history of our resistance. These are not men and women who sought the glory of the battlefield. They are the tailors, the teachers, and the farmers who looked at their scorched earth and decided that enough was enough. They are the calloused hands that have traded the plough for the rifle, not out of a love for war, but out of an unshakable love for their home. This was the mobilization of a nation that had decided that its survival would no longer be outsourced to those who did not share its blood or its burden. The VDP represent the heart of our sovereignty, a shield made of the people, for the people. The campaign to retake every single centimeter of our territory is a symphony of grit and sacrifice. We are moving through the blazing borderlands with a deliberate and iron-willed pace. Each village liberated, each hill reclaimed, is a stitch in the fabric of our sovereignty that is being painstakingly mended. We speak of 75% of the territory now being back under the control of the people, a triumph of will over chaos. This is not a mere statistic. It is the sound of life returning to the markets of the north and the schools of the east. It is the sight of the national flag snapping in the wind over lands that were once deemed unreachable. We are clearing the paths that were blocked by fear, and we are building roads where there were once only the tracks of the displaced. This is the road to our collective harvest, a path we carve through the granite of history with our own sweat. This is the raw reality of our struggle. We have faced an enemy that hides in the shadows, an enemy that thrives on the division and the silence of the international community. But the shield we have forged is not easily broken. The integration of the volunteer forces with the regular armed units has created a bond that is the strongest weapon in our arsenal. We are no longer waiting for a miracle from the sky. We are reclaiming our reality on the ground. The sweat of our brows is the water that nurtures the seeds of peace, and the fire in our hearts is the light that guides us through the darkest corridors of the borderlands. We are proving that when a nation fights for its own soil, it possesses a strength that no amount of foreign weaponry can ever replicate. It is a pride that cannot be bought, and a dignity that cannot be borrowed. The road we are walking is steep, and it is paved with the memories of those who fell along the way. We honor their sacrifice by ensuring that the land they died for is a land that will finally be free. We are moving toward the final borders, toward the lines on the map that define our existence as a sovereign people. Ibrahim Traoré has reminded us that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and a willingness to stand when others choose to kneel. We are not just fighting to regain territory, we are fighting to regain our very sense of self. We are proving that the Sahel is not a place of perpetual crisis, but a place of perpetual courage. The harvest of our peace is approaching, but the labor is far from finished. However, as the columns of the liberated move forward and the shadows of the terror begin to retreat into the deep desert, a new and unsettling discovery has begun to emerge from the liberated villages. In the quiet rooms and the abandoned squares, the traces of a deeper betrayal are being found. Ghosts of an old influence that suggest the enemy we face was never standing alone. As we stand on the threshold of total victory, we must ask, who truly benefits from a border that is never at peace? The silence of the northern frontier was not broken by the roar of cannons, but by the soft, rhythmic sound of a single piece of fabric snapping against the wind. In towns that were once whispered about as graveyards of hope, the moment of truth arrived on mornings that smelled of rain and iron. As the national tricolour ascended the pole, rising above the scars of a decade of occupation, the air itself seemed to change. For thousands of days, these communities had been besieged islands in a sea of terror, their people surviving on nothing but grit and the distant promise of liberation. When the first units of the regular army and the volunteers of the VDP finally marched into the squares, they did not find a defeated population. They found a people who had guarded their dignity in the darkest corners of their hearts. The embrace between a weary soldier and an elderly man who had refused to leave his ancestral soil was more than a greeting. It was the repair of a broken world. This is the peak of the struggle, where the abstract maps of the planners are replaced by the warm, trembling hands of a people reunited with their land. The peak of this emotional arc is found in the eyes of those who have returned. We must speak of the mothers who walked back into villages they thought they would never see again, their feet treading upon the very soil where they had once buried their hopes. There is a profound, shimmering pride in the act of reclaiming a home. It is a pride that transcends the mere possession of property. It is the reclamation of a legacy. For too long, the people of the borderlands were treated as collateral damage in a conflict they did not choose. But on the day of liberation, as the shadow of the terror was pushed back into the deep desert, the regret of the years lost to displacement began to dissolve. The anger that had fueled the resistance was transformed into a quiet, steadfast hope. The people did not just cheer. They knelt and kissed the earth, acknowledging that the soil is the only thing that truly belongs to them. At the heart of this climax stands the figure of the architect of this defiance. Ibrahim Traoré, standing upon the very earth that had been scorched by the enemy, spoke to the troops and the civilians with a voice that carried the weight of a nation's resolve. He did not speak from a distant palace. He spoke from the front lines, his uniform dusted with the same earth as the men he led. He reminded everyone that the reclamation of territory is but the first step in the reclamation of the African soul. "We did not come to this land as conquerors," he declared, his words cutting through the silence of the liberated square. "We came as sons. We did not come to rule over you. We came to return the land to its rightful owners." His message was a hammer striking the anvil of history. The sacrifice of the fallen is the mortar that holds the stones of our new house together. This was the moment of absolute truth, where the bond between the leader and the led was sealed in the shared dust of the battlefield. The reaction across the nation has been a tidal wave of unbridled emotion. In the capital and in the smallest hamlets, the news of each liberated town is met with a celebration that is both ancient and new. We see the youth taking to the streets not in protest, but in a display of fierce, unyielding patriotism. They are the generation that has decided that the era of the victim is over. The media reports from the front lines have ignited a fire of confidence that is spreading far beyond our borders. People are seeing that the impossible is becoming the reality. The narrative of a region in terminal decline is being shattered by the images of soldiers and civilians working together to rebuild the clinics and the schools that were once reduced to ash. This is the harvest of our courage, a season where we finally reap the peace that we have sown with our own blood. Even in the international media centers, the tone has begun to shift from one of dismissive hoarseness to one of stunned realization. The analysts who predicted a swift collapse are now forced to explain the unprecedented resilience of a people who chose to fight. They see the images of the VDP volunteers, men and women from all walks of life, standing guard over their own harvests, and they are beginning to understand that this is not a conventional war. It is a revolution of the spirit. The pride we feel is not just in the territory gained, but in the fact that we have gained it on our own terms, using our own strength and following our own vision. We have moved from the raw vulnerability of the besieged to the value-added power of a nation that knows its worth. As the sun sets over the liberated borderlands, casting long, golden shadows over the newly established outposts, the euphoria of victory is tempered by a gritty, focused determination. The soldiers know that the enemy has not vanished. They have merely been pushed back into the void. The work of securing the peace is as dangerous as the work of winning the war. The patrols continue through the night, the eyes of the volunteers scanning the horizon for any sign of the shadows returning. The soil is ours again, but the seeds of safety must be guarded with eternal vigilance. We have cleared the road, but the bridge to a permanent peace is still being built, one stone at a time. Yet as the celebrations fade into the quiet work of reconstruction, a chilling question begins to circulate among the command centers at the front. As we push the enemy to the very edge of our map, we find that the weapons they leave behind are not made in the desert. They carry the marks of factories far across the seas, from nations that claim to be our partners in peace. On the threshold of total reclamation, we are forced to confront a reality that is more terrifying than any battlefield. What do you do when the hands that claim to offer you aid are the same hands that are sharpening the knives of your enemies? The return of the state to the scorched earth of the borderlands is far more than a military achievement. It is the slow, painstaking reconstruction of the very soul of the nation. For too long, the political geography of the region was defined by absence, a void where the law was silent and the only authority was the shadow of the gun. Reclaiming this territory means reclaiming the social contract, the sacred promise between a people and their protectors that has been broken for nearly a decade. As the smoke of battle clears, we must acknowledge the bitterness that remains in the mouths of those who return. They do not find the homes they left. They find skeletons of buildings and fields choked by weeds. This regret is a heavy stone in the heart of the Republic, a reminder of the years when the state was a distant ghost, unable to shield its children from the storm. But in this ruin, there is a fierce opportunity to plant the seeds of a new and unshakable order. The stability of Burkina Faso is now being forged in the crucible of these liberated zones. Sovereignty is not an abstract concept discussed in the capital. It is the reopening of a primary school in a village that has not heard the sound of a lesson in 5 years. It is the arrival of a mobile clinic to a community that had forgotten the touch of a healer. By establishing a permanent administrative presence on the very edge of the map, the government is proving that the era of abandonment is over. This is the practical application of dignity. When the state provides the security for a farmer to plant his grain and the certainty that he will be the one to harvest it, it builds a loyalty that no foreign ideology can ever subvert. We are moving from the raw vulnerability of a fractured state to the value-added strength of a unified nation, where every citizen is a stakeholder in the common peace. This political transformation requires a discipline that is as demanding as the combat itself. Rebuilding trust in the borderlands is a labor that requires patience and the calloused hands of thousands of civil servants who are willing to serve where the danger is still a whisper in the wind. The legitimacy of our path is found in the transparency of our reconstruction and the inclusion of every ethnic group and every community in the new national vision. We are proving that our sovereignty is not a wall to shut the world out, but a foundation upon which to build a house that can withstand any external pressure. The stability we seek is not the silence of the graveyard, but the vibrant, noisy rebirth of a society that has decided to live on its own terms. Yet, as we witness this immense effort of the spirit and the will, we must pause to reflect on the nature of our strength. Do you believe that the power of the people's collective will and the dedication of volunteers can ultimately replace the need for massive, modern foreign weaponry in the defense of national sovereignty? We invite you to share your perspective in the comments below, for this is a question that touches the very heart of the African future. The consequences of this reclamation ripple through the entire political fabric of the Sahel. By securing the borders, we are securing the arteries of our economy and the integrity of our political institutions. The state is no longer a predator or a stranger, it is becoming a shield. However, we must be honest about the fragility of this moment. The reconstruction is happening in the shadow of a global order that often views our independence as an inconvenience. Every bridge we rebuild and every well we dig is a statement of defiance against those who predicted our collapse. We are weaving a new garment of national unity, but the threads are still fresh, and the needles of our enemies are always searching for a loose stitch. The hope that is rising from the ashes of the borderlands is a light that cannot be ignored, but it is a light that must be guarded with every ounce of our collective energy. We have cleared the land, and we have replanted the seeds of the state, but the season of the harvest is still a long road away. We are walking through a landscape of ghosts, turning them into a future of flesh and bone. The pride we feel in our progress is tempered by the knowledge that the cost of failure is too high to even contemplate. Yet, as the administration takes root and the markets begin to hum with the sound of a returning life, a disturbing pattern is being noticed by the intelligence officers stationed at the frontier. In the documents captured from the retreating shadows and the digital footprints left behind in the desert, a series of coordinates has been found that do not point to our own lands. They point to the very heart of the organizations that claim to be monitoring our progress for the sake of humanity. On the cusp of total national restoration, we are discovering that the most dangerous border is not the one made of sand and stone, but the one made of ink and hidden agendas. The international community stands at a crossroads, watching the shifting sands of the Sahel with a mixture of disbelief and calculated apprehension. For decades, the narrative of African security was dictated from the marble halls of New York, Paris, and Brussels, where decisions were made based on maps that ignored the heartbeat of the people living on them. But the monologue has been shattered. The regional blocs and global organizations that once viewed our borders as their administrative playgrounds now find their influence evaporating like a desert mist. There is a palpable tension in the diplomatic corridors of the economic community of West African states, as they witness a nation that has chosen to define its own safety. The old levers of pressure, the threats of isolation, and the conditional offers of military support are no longer gripping the gears of a nation that has found its own strength. The role of the United States and the European powers has shifted from active intervention to cautious observation, tinged with a deep-seated legalistic anxiety. They speak of human rights and international standards, yet their voices ring hollow to those who have seen their sovereignty bartered for decades in exchange for a security that never arrived. Ibrahim Traoré has forced a radical recalibration of the global geopolitical chessboard. By placing the volunteers of the VDP at the forefront of the national defense, he has proven that a people's army is more than just a collection of weapons. It is a manifestation of the national will. The foreign powers are struggling to understand a partner who no longer seeks their permission to protect his own children. The global north is witnessing the birth of a fierce independence that refuses to be bought, borrowed, or bullied. As the international organizations attempt to navigate this new landscape, they find that the ground is no longer theirs to command. The alliance of the Sahel is creating its own diplomatic language, one that speaks of dignity and mutual respect, rather than dependency and oversight. The world may continue to hover at the edges of our map, waiting for a sign of weakness, but they are discovering that the shield of the Sahel is forged from a steel they did not provide and cannot control. The gaze of the world is fixed upon us, but we are no longer looking back for approval. We are looking forward to the horizon we have chosen. Yet, as the global giants reposition their cameras and rewrite their reports, they are missing the most profound transformation of all. The victory on the border is not just a change in the line of control, it is a change in the spirit of the continent. But as we stand at the edge of this new world, a final and more subtle danger begins to emerge, not from the barrel of a gun, but from the seductive whispers of those who promise a peace that costs nothing but our freedom. The road toward a secure and permanent peace is not a destination we reach through a single victory, but a continuous journey of vigilance and reconstruction. As we stand upon the reclaimed soil of the borderlands in this year of 2026, the roadmap for the future is clear. We must transform the front line into a lifeline. The military success of the past months has provided the breathing room necessary for the second phase of our national restoration. We are moving from the urgent work of liberation to the enduring work of stabilization, ensuring that the shadows of terror never find a place to rest again. This is the future of Burkina Faso, a nation where the borders are no longer wounds, but seams of strength that bind us to our neighbors in a shared destiny of safety. We must remain clear-eyed about the risks that linger in the parched grass and the rocky outcrops of the frontier. The enemy we have pushed back is resilient, and those who profit from our instability will not simply vanish because we have reclaimed our map. The path ahead requires us to maintain the iron discipline of the volunteer and the professional soldier alike. We are investing in a sustainable security architecture that relies on the eyes and ears of the local communities, ensuring that every citizen is a guardian of the peace. The roadmap includes the permanent return of administrative services, the fortification of local justice systems, and the creation of economic opportunities that give our youth a reason to choose the tool over the weapon. We are proving that the most effective shield against terror is a society that is prosperous, unified, and deeply rooted in its own dignity. Under the unwavering leadership of Ibrahim Traoré, the message of this struggle has become a beacon for the entire Sahel. We are walking a path toward a horizon where the term conflict zone is replaced by opportunity zone. The solidarity of our alliance is our greatest asset, as we coordinate our efforts to ensure that there is no vacuum for the shadows to exploit. We are not just defending a territory, we are defending the very idea of an independent African future. The light of our victory is rising, and though the road remains long and the labor remains hard, we march forward with the certainty of a people who have finally taken their destiny into their own hands. The harvest of our peace is within our reach, but it will only be gathered by those who refuse to stop planting. We are clearing the final obstacles, building the final bridges, and preparing the soil for a future where the only thing that grows in our borderlands is the prosperity of our children. The shield is ready, the spirit is unbowed, and the dawn of a new era is breaking over the Sahel. In the final reckoning, the victory in the borderlands is not a victory of steel alone, but a victory of the African soul. We have seen that the map of our destiny is not drawn by the pens of distant diplomats, but by the steady hands of those who refuse to let their land be consumed by the shadows. The story of Burkina Faso is no longer a story of a nation under siege. It is a story of a nation in ascent. We have reclaimed the soil, but more importantly, we have reclaimed the belief that our safety is our own responsibility. Ibrahim Traoré has acted as the catalyst for this awakening, proving that when a leader stands with his people in the dust of the frontier, there is no limit to what can be achieved. This is the harvest of our courage, a season of peace that we have earned with every drop of sweat and every moment of unyielding resolve. The light of our sovereignty is now a beacon that shines across the entire Sahel, illuminating a path for all who have been told that their freedom is a luxury they cannot afford. We are proving that the most effective shield against any enemy is a people who are deeply rooted in their own dignity and unified in their purpose. The road of Burkina Faso is a road of pride, a path that leads away from the darkness of terror and toward a horizon of permanent stability. We are no longer waiting for the world to save us. We are busy saving ourselves and building a home where our children can grow without fear. The sovereignty of the heart is the greatest fortress we have ever built, and its gates are now open to a future of our own making. We stand at the threshold of a new era, where the term borderland no longer signifies a place of danger, but a place of opportunity and a seam of strength. The journey has been long, and the cost has been high, but the reward is a nation that can finally breathe the air of true independence. We are the architects of our own peace, the guardians of our own soil, and the masters of our own destiny. If this story of reclamation and the fierce spirit of the Sahel has moved your sense of justice, do not let this moment pass in silence. We are documenting the rise of a people who have decided to stand tall, and we invite you to walk this path with us. Subscribe to our channel and stand with us as we share the truths that the world often tries to ignore. Join the conversation in the comments below and share your own vision for a free and unified Africa. Together, we are building a community of the mind and the heart, dedicated to the principles of sovereignty and dignity. The dawn is breaking over the reclaimed earth, and the era of the lion has truly begun. Stand with us, for the story is just beginning.